All right. Hey, welcome back to the Life Recreated podcast. It's all about learning, healing, and growing. And listen, I'm excited about this episode today. I got a good friend with me. We just became friends, just connected recently. My man, Taiye Uhuru, is with me today, man. We're going to be having a wonderful conversation because I know he's got a wealth of wisdom and knowledge and experience that he's going to be sharing with us. But let me read a little bit about him, man. He's an author, he's a historian. He's a genealogist, a teacher, an urban gardener, a beekeeper, and he has a podcast and a podcast host. And he's also an independent hip hop artist. He has visited over 60 countries. Before we started, I was mentioning that to him, but he's visited over 60 countries. He's also dedicated several years to working with people that have developmental disabilities. And he's also has a podcast, like I mentioned before, named Taiye Speaks, and a music video called The Black of the Berry, Do Revolutionaries Go to Heaven, which you can find on YouTube. He just released his first book, The Afro Set, back in 2020. And in 2022, just last year, he just released his first documentary called The Land of Blacks. And it's a documentary, which is a collection of his personal footage to his travels to Egypt. And how we connected was through a Facebook group he also has called Black Men Supporting Black Men. And so glad to have him here on the podcast with me, man. How you doing, brother? How's everything going?
I'm good. I'm good. I want to thank you first and foremost, King, for the invite. I truly appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm excited to have this convo, bro. So I want to dive in, man, and I might take this in a different direction, but this is what I wanted to know. I went and I listened to your song, Do Revolutionaries Go to Heaven? What was your mindset? Where were you at when you were writing that song, and what were you thinking about that inspired that song? Because this is a dope song, and I really loved it. I loved the message behind it. But where were you at mindset wise?
Thanks. I appreciate you. I was in Johannesburg at the time. This was in 2020. This was probably like the summer. Lockdown was still going on, at least where we was at. You know what I'm saying? Over there in South Africa, it was locked down. A lot of the stores and stuff was closed. And then I just was looking online, getting a lot of messages that a lot of people was dying, losing their life at just a astronomical rate, something like we never seen before. And then at the time I was working on my book, The Afro Set, and it's a book about Black nationalism and Black power and revolutionaries. I got a lot of revolutionaries in my family, and I just put the two together. So I was staying in a neighborhood called Maboneng. So it's like an art district. So if you look at the walls, it's a lot of paintings and drawings and artwork. People like Nelson Mandela, Marcus Garvey, Huey Newton, Malcolm X. And I would see these paintings every day when I walk up and down the street to go to the grocery store. And it was a real vibrant area before the lockdown. It would be rappers, singers, dancers, poets, musicians, drummers, all type of people. It's a real amazing place. But like I say, it got locked down. So the clubs and the bars and everything was closed. So when I was shooting the video in the neighborhood where I was staying in South Africa, it was just me out there from the cameraman. So it all came together to give me that vibe. And mentally, I was like everybody else, just trying to figure out what was going to happen next.
Yeah. Yeah, that was when you think back on 2020, which is crazy, that was a wild, just everything that was happening during that time, bro. It's like you will never expect to be or have that happen in your lifetime. You know what I'm saying? It's crazy. What brought you out to South Africa? Why were you out that way?
Man, I was living out there, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Just enjoying life. I travel a lot. I've been, like you say, 60 countries. I've been to about 20 African countries. So my goal is to live in Africa. You know what I'm saying? Marcus Garvey and Malcolm X told us to. But just unfortunately, you know what I'm saying? Like everybody else, we had these big plans going into the new year, and all of that just got thrown off.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So I know you've dropped a lot of names like Marcus Garvey and a lot of those revolutionaries. And I think you had even mentioned that you have a lot of people that have been in that same type of environment in your family. Did you grow up like getting a lot of that feedback as far as being a black man and just the power of being a black man? Did you hear a lot of that message when you was growing up?
To a certain degree, my mom, she used to tell me about my uncle all the time, her brother. So I didn't get to meet him, but she would tell me stories, tell me little things, plant little seeds. My brother loved black people. My brother, he was fighting for black people. He died for black people. My grandmother would tell me stories about her father. She said, my father said we was Africans and we should go back to Africa. Her father was a Garveyite. So he was a part of that great migration. He left Atlanta. He left the South with my great grandmother. And when they moved to Cleveland, they joined the UNIA. And you know what I'm saying? That stuff just trickled down to me. So the people I'm mentioning, I didn't really meet them, but people would tell me stories and things about them. So I always had a love for Black people, Black history, African history, whatever term, whatever name we use, it was about us. But a lot of people didn't grow up hearing those stories.
Yeah, gotcha. And how much of a role do you think it's played in like your mindset now? Because how old are you now?
I'm 38.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. So yeah, you're around the same age as me. How much of a role do you think that played growing up? Because, and the reason I ask that is I grew up in a different background. I grew up in South Florida where it was just a melting pot of just all kind of Caribbean and all those different things. And so we didn't really learn or hear a lot of some of those messages and those things growing up. So my mindset, my perspective on my history a lot, I feel like I missed
Mhm.
a lot of it just because of how that environment. But for you, like hearing a lot of that and hearing a lot of those stories, how much do you think that played an impact in how you became a man so far in this world?
A rare, significant role because it empowered me. You know what I'm saying? That led me to want to learn more about my family and do further research. Like I said, I wrote an entire book about it. And I'm a genealogist. So people pay me to research their family tree. Black Americans, Jamaican Americans, Latinos. I work with different groups of people, but primarily Black Americans. But to the viewers, I could tell them it's important to know who your great grandparents was and their parents was and what plantation you got your last name from or what type of career they was in, because you might just think they was cotton pickers. They might have did something significant. They might be doing the same thing that you're doing. It just gives you a sense of who you are in totality. It's okay to learn about people like Malcolm X and Dr. King, but you should learn about the people in your family as well, because they struggled, they made sacrifices, and they did a lot of phenomenal things to survive.
Hmm. And that's real true. I was having this conversation too, because so to what you're saying, like part of my family, like when I was growing up, they made it a point because like my family's Jamaican, right? A lot of my family and our background is Jamaican. But I remember my parents making it a point to send us back like every summer, and they would send us back to Jamaica, and they would take us out to the country. They would show us like, this is your roots. This is who you are. This is where you come from. And it did something to me where it gave me a confidence that I knew, okay, this is where I'm from. This is the man that I am, and this is where my roots come from. So I would present myself to the world a lot different because it's like, all right, I know where I'm coming from. With what you do as far as genealogy and how important that is, I think that for us, a lot of times when we don't know where we come from, right? It's hard for us to really stand firm or stand strong on kind of anything. You know what I'm saying? Like when you work with, let me ask you this question. When you work with people as far as helping them to find and really map out their genealogy, have you ever noticed a change in how they respond or how they act or how they talk when they start discovering some of who they are and like some of their history? You ever notice any of that?
Yeah, I noticed that with anybody. You learn
Yeah.
stuff about your family because it varies. Because, like I said, it was a guy, his family was from Jamaica, and he was saying something about him having some type of history of stomach problems. And I found his great grandfather, which he didn't know who the guy was or his name, but I found that for him. I found some records in Jamaica, and then I think he died from having stomach problems. So it could be health related, it could be career related. People like, dang, I'm into this. I'm into like some people like I ran track. My great grandfather ran track. My great grandfather was a track star. So all of that stuff, you don't know how it's going to hit you, but each person may latch on to one specific thing. And in some cases, I help people find other family members because a girl wanted me to do her family tree, but her mother was adopted. She was an orphan. So I was able to find her mother's sister who was in another state. I got her phone number. I gave it to her. And she hit me back later. She was excited to tell me that her mother talked to her biological sister and her mother like 60. So
Dang, that's crazy. And that's got to be wild being a part of that, right? Because you're connecting like families that they didn't even know they existed. You know what I'm saying? Or they may have known they existed, but it's who are these people? You know what I mean? Who are these individuals and definitely the impact that it can make? That's wild. How does that process even work? Like, where do you start to track all of that down? Is it something where you're like, okay, you map everything out first and then you work backwards? Talk to me about that process on finding somebody's history.
Yeah, I map it out. So for the average person, it's hard to understand. So you got two parents, you got four grandparents, eight great, 32 great, 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 64 great, 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 128, 204. You know what I'm saying? It just
Yeah.
keeps doubling and doubling. But once a person give me their parents' names and their grandparents' name, I could fill it all in and then I'll go from there. So if, say you give me your grandmother's name, then I got to find her maiden name. Then I'll find her parents, then I could find her parents, and then I may not find her parents. I may find her brothers and sisters, which they would have the same parents. So it's not always just in a straight line like that. You might have to get a cousin or an uncle, but once you get them, then it'll all get filled in. So you just have to look for different documents. So it might be a marriage license. This person and this person got married. Who were their parents? Where were they born at? Might be a death certificate, might be a birth certificate, might be a military record, might be a newspaper article. So you just look for different things and fill in the blank.
Yeah. Dang, that's crazy. That's wild. How long you been doing that for?
Probably about a decade now.
Really? Wow. Gotcha, man. Did you get interested in that by way of like discovering your own history? Was that something that kind of intrigued you into doing that? Or did you find your personal history after you had got into it?
Like I said, I had a lot of pro-black men in my family. So my cousin, he was doing it like in the 80s and the 90s, but they didn't have the internet. So he had to like go get real, go down to the spot and look through files and documents. So by the time I got into it, then I go on ancestry.com, familysearch.com. I do actual research. I do go to the libraries and the colleges and stuff like that, but I just had an advantage by having somebody in my family who had already done it and then having the internet, you know what I'm saying? But like I say, this is my cousin. Our family trees are not 100% exactly the same, but we
The
do have
same.
a significant amount of ancestry that we share because we got different fathers and different mothers and stuff like that.
Gotcha. How important would you say it is for us as men to learn our history? Would you say that every man needs to take that time to really figure out their ancestry and their history?
I think for black men, yeah, definitely, because we can't afford not to know our history. Like if we was white or something, like a white person could be misinformed about their history, but they still had a mentality that they are great and they invented and did all of these things. Where we black, we think we didn't invented or created or did nothing. Like I say, not only to learn the history about the greats like Malcolm and Martin, but we got to learn about our great grandfather and his father and his brothers and sisters and just see some of the trials and tribulations that they went through and endured and survived. So just going through life, you will see like this person lived like this person did that. I can do no less. I got to be greater. I can't give up. I can't quit. And it's like a GPS. Everybody got their own purpose and destination, but it'll let you know where you coming from. So if I'm trying to get to your house, you gonna be like, where you at? Where you coming from? If I can't tell you that, it's gonna make it a little bit more difficult. But if I can say I'm on this street at this corner at this address, and you be like, oh, just turn right, just come straight. But if I don't know where I'm at, you go, I don't know either.
Yeah. That's a good analogy. I like the GPS analogy on that. Yeah, and it makes sense. If I don't know where I'm coming from, how am I gonna know how to get to the next destination?
It's
If
gonna
I
make
don't
it
know.
harder.
Yeah, it makes it a lot harder. Because I'm sure, like, just even in this conversation with you, bro, like, I'm just thinking back on, I know, like, for my family, like, I've done and started research on, like, my grandfather. A lot of people, like, my mom tells me, like, I act so much like him. He was in the Jamaican police force and very militant and military minded, and I'm the same way. And I never understood, like, where that came from until I started learning about him and how he was and just understanding that. And it really did empower me. It helped me to see, nah, there is greatness in me. Because a lot of times as men, we don't. I would say even a lot of times as black men, a lot of times in the community, a lot of times where we're growing up, we don't see sometimes that greatness that we have in us, right? Because of the
Mhm.
narrative that everybody else around us is pushing. So it definitely helps, man. I love it. I love it. I love it. So I want to switch gears a little bit, man, because I love the history. I love the empowerment about it. I know we had connected because I had ran into a group that you had that was about Black men supporting other Black men. It was a pretty good sized group, man. What caused you to start that group? What was the mindset behind it? And what were you thinking during that time?
I believe I started the group in 2020.
Mhm.
This COVID, man, everybody stressed out, depressed, anxiety, thoughts of suicide, everything, economic stress, relationship stress, people having babies, women get postpartum, men get it too. A lot of people was having babies and stuff like that. Everything was stressing everybody out, even myself. So I could see a change in my body, not only physically, but mentally. So I started the group specifically for Black men because Black men are oftentimes the last people to ask for help. And they also the last people that's offered help. If a Black man don't got no money, and he's broke, he don't mean nothing. He don't exist. But if a woman doesn't have money, she can get on this program, she can get on that program, she can get in the housing program. And not saying that they don't deserve it or need that help, but the men oftentimes they get shunned. Some places you can't even live if it's a man in the house. So we don't have places like that for men. And it's our fault to a certain degree too, because we don't communicate. Women communicate more, so a woman may say, okay, I dated this person. They hurt me. They did this to me. This is how I felt. Even if they just talking to their friends, we won't even tell our friends like, yeah, this girl broke my heart because we'll clown each other or society itself will clown us. So it got to the point where so many people was bottling a lot of different emotions in. I started like a mental health call for Black men and Black boys. We just talk about things that they experience, childhood, middle age, elderly, whatever. Because sometimes we get stuck. Like some people, something that happened to them in their childhood that they can't change, it creates depression. So they stuck in the past. And then some people may be in a current position, they present, they might be facing economical stress. Or they may be, some people are more worried about the future. They got anxiety. They so scared about what's going to happen tomorrow or next week or next year, stuff
Yeah.
that ain't even happened. And some people suffering from all three. That's what motivated me.
That's good, and I think you're right, man. 2020, we're going back to 2020, right? There was a lot of us that really needed that. I think why I started even like having a lot of these conversations was the experience of going through that, man, and really trying to figure that out. One of the things that I'm curious about is, like I said, you got a lot of folks in there, right? You got a lot of guys that are in there. What was that like? Because I think to myself, one of the challenges that I've had is like going into like a group situation where I'm talking about a lot of these things with other men and to other men. What was that situation like for you when it started out? Were you finding that guys were like wide open and they wanted to talk, or did it take some time to build that up?
It depends. Some people, they was ready to talk, it's like they was waiting on it. And then some people, they took them a couple calls. So sometimes people may just want to listen in, you know what I'm saying? But the main thing is that everybody going through the same thing. So it's like we all on the call, we pretty much done went through the same thing, you know what I'm saying? More or less. But some people is just a little bit more vocal. So I think it creates like a, what do they call it? Like a fellowship where people just talk. Cause you might have went through it already. You might be going through it, or you might have just, you know what I'm saying, got through it, or you might be on your way through it. So people just at different points. And then we just try to share more tools. What can you do when you're feeling stressed or depressed or anxiety? The solutions. Cause it's a constant effort to maintain that mental health, just like your physical health. You can't just go jogging one time and that's it. It's
That
gonna
would
have to
be
do
nice, right? That would be
life.
nice.
Yeah, you gotta eat healthy for life. So we'll do meditation. People will share ideas, things like fishing or playing chess. Or for me, something I do a lot is jogging. I jog 2 or 3 times a week. That's good for mental stress. It's good for physical health, but it's good for mental health. Working out, eating healthy, changing your diet. It's
You
a
ever
lot of
try
stuff.
yoga? You ever try yoga?
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, yoga's been a big one. I got a good friend of mine. He just started one. He's got a group called Black Men Heal, and he that's how he started it was through a yoga class. And
Mm.
I had practiced yoga here at the house, but because a lot of times, like as like a black man, like I ain't gonna really put all that information out there. You know what I'm saying? Because we didn't grow up like seeing that or anybody that we knew that was practicing those type of things. But it's been a huge help. So when you were running a lot of those calls, man, did you find I think you had mentioned that you realize that a lot of us we're all going through the same thing. Did you find that as like one of the common themes in a lot of those conversations that all of us are really just going through the same thing?
Yeah, I think so. As young black men, we got a lot more in common than we think we do. You know what I'm saying? Money is a big one, economic stress, racial oppression. That's another one. Going through relationships, having family differences. Some people got issues with their siblings or their parents or different things like that.
Yeah, for sure. How did that group help you while you were interacting it? Like, did you feel like it added some value to your own life?
Yeah, definitely. Just being open to try different things to help myself mentally because it's a necessity. You know what I'm saying? Like they say, life is 90% mental. So you have to preserve this. If this go, then the rest gonna go. So just trying different things. Like I started beekeeping. That's something physical, but it's good for mental health. Starting a garden, growing fruits and vegetables. I bought some chickens, tapping into nature more, getting fresh air, going on hikes, touching the soil, digging in the ground. It's like special enzymes and chemicals that's in the dirt. And it helps release endorphins in your body. So you might wake up on a bad note sometimes. You might not get a good night's sleep. You might wake up on the wrong side of the bed. So to hear them chickens crowing and watering the fruits and vegetables early in the morning, the sun is shining, the air is fresh, like lift your spirit instead of you being in the funk for the rest of the day. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. I can definitely see it. Do you think that you learn that perspective though from more traveling than anything? Do you think that kind of changed a lot of that perspective for you?
I think it's a combination. You know what I'm saying? Definitely everything plays a role into it. Traveling has been a phenomenal experience. You know what I'm saying? Going from country to country, learning about different cultures, different languages, trying different foods, dating different type of women, man, just enjoying myself. But you still have to have a balance. You know what I'm saying? Because I can't kick it every day, 365. I have regular days too.
Yeah, no, I feel you. And the reason I asked that is because, like I mentioned before we got on, like I was in the military, and so I had the opportunity to go to a lot of countries, and in that experience, seeing how other people live and seeing how they interact is what opened up my eyes to learning how to live differently. You know what I'm saying? And learning how to be
Indeed.
more open to things and being like, all right, yeah, like granted, I might be from South Florida and we do things a certain way, but these people here are showing me something completely different. You know what I'm saying? And showing me something that
Mhm.
can work and really grow. So I appreciate that. That's good. That's good. So as we and with that support group that you had and that you were working on, did you have, because I know it's for black men and sons, did you have a lot of guys that were bringing on their sons as well on some of these calls?
It was a couple young guys, but I don't think it was any father and sons. A lot of the sons, the kids that came on, their mom sent them in. You know what I'm saying? Because they was like single parent situations. So they like, you would be a good person to talk to my son. So it was
Yeah.
like broke up the calls. It's for all ages, but like I say, I think more so the young guys, their mom sent them in, and then most of the guys that was grown, they came in by themselves.
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, because I always wondered with that. I did an interview with a good friend of mine. He has a nonprofit called Can I Be Vulnerable? And what he did was he started interviewing black men, just talking to them about their stories, things that they had experienced. And he talked to me about how when he first did it, his son was there listening to him give his story and share his story. And he talked about how important that was for their relationship, especially as a black father, a black son, seeing his dad open up about these difficult things that at some
Mm,
point he's going to go through. Like his son's going to go
definitely.
through. We all going through it, right? But seeing another man being willing to open up and share those things, especially as your father, you're looking at him experiencing that. Are you a father? Are you a dad?
No, not yet, man. I
Not
hope
yet?
to have some.
I got
So
you. Yeah. There you go. There you go, man.
yeah.
Definitely gotta you step into that fatherhood, man. Step into that father, especially with what you're doing, man. You'll be able to hand down and really be able to teach him some good things, man. Let me ask you about the documentary that you came out with, The
Mhm.
Land of Blacks. This is so the documentary is pretty much just your entire journey of your travel through pretty much Egypt, right?
Yeah, because I've been to Egypt a lot of times. I've been to Egypt like 10 times. So I always get a lot of good pictures and video footage of a lot of things that are not on the internet. A lot of times we Google stuff, but man, a lot of museums and a lot of historic sites and stuff, you would never see none of that stuff. So I compiled everything and it's not a Netflix documentary, but it's
Mhm.
just like I say, it's a collection of different things. And I just try to put it together, with a little bit of music to give people an introduction into that ancient Egyptian culture.
Right. So are you pretty heavy into learning that culture? And because you've been there 10 times, so I'm imagining going back there. Would you say that you're pretty heavy in learning a lot of that culture? Is that in your background?
My area of expertise is the Black Power movement of Cleveland. That's what I wrote my book about. So
Okay.
that when it comes to that, I would be probably the most knowledgeable human on earth, with the exception of people that was there and,
Yeah.
lived it. But when it comes to Egyptian history, I wouldn't say that I'm very knowledgeable because it's 10,000 years of history. So
Yeah.
most people not. Some people be fronting, you know what I'm saying? Like I say, I've been 10 times and it don't seem like enough. They still finding more and more stuff, but I probably know more than the average person if they was interested in learning something. Definitely, that's why I compiled the documentary. I think it's a good introduction, the basics, but it's hard. It's hard to imagine how much history is in Egypt. You know what I'm saying? America is what, about 400 years old,
That's
and
what I'm
Egypt
saying. We're a
like
young country, bro.
8,000, 10,000 years old.
Yeah, we're a young country. Yeah, we're a young country. So you brought up the Cleveland Black Power movement. Is that's what you say that your expertise is, right? And you said you wrote a book. You wrote a book on that. That was. Did you get into a lot of that? You probably got into a lot of that just because of your history, right? Just because of like your family and stuff like that, right? I can't hear you. Hold on.
Am I muted?
There we
I'm
go.
muted.
There you go. You good?
Yeah, my bad. I keep unmuting it. No, what I meant to say is I should have said that my area of expertise is the Afro set of the Black Power movement, because the Black Power movement is a span of almost a decade. So a lot of people made contributions, but I specifically focused on the Afro set. So my uncle, he co-founded the Afro set. He came up with the name the Afro set. Afro stood for African. So their group was at the forefront of reintroducing Black people in the city of Cleveland to African history, African culture, African language, African spirituality, African dancing, music, African fashion. They was really heavy on it. So my uncle, he was the minister of information of the Afro set. So he was a poet. He was the group's photographer. He was the editor of the newspaper. He did a lot of speaking engagements and stuff like that. So when the media would come and interview the organization, a lot of times he would be the spokesman. He would go to different states. He would meet with groups like the Panthers or the US organization. He met a lot of revolutionaries like Stokely Carmichael, Bunchy Carter, John Huggins, Malana Karinga. I'm trying to think, Amiri Baraka, and a few others.
Dang. So that had to play a real instrumental role in what we're experiencing now, like today. You know what I'm saying? As our in the black culture, I think that had to play a huge role in what he was doing and the moves he was making in that.
Yeah, definitely, especially in the city of Cleveland. My uncle went to California to the Black Congress, which was a meeting that was held after Martin Luther King got killed. So a lot of the Black nationalist groups went to California to meet up with Malana Karinga and different groups like that. And that's when he found out about Kwanzaa. And then he brought that back to Ohio. So he was like one of the first people teaching people in the city of Cleveland in Ohio about Kwanzaa and African principles and learning how to speak Swahili and stuff like that. But it was a self-defense organization. So they would go to the farms, they would do target practice, they would train with the rifles, with the machetes, the sticks, do martial arts, military drills and stuff like that. They have like different social programs, free lunch, free breakfast. They had a nursery. A lot of people focus on the militant side of things, but there were men and women in the organization and they married, they dated, they had children. So that's what the purpose of the nursery was. They would teach the kids at the earliest ages. A is for Africa, B is for Black, C is for Congo, giving them that Black empowerment from day one.
Yeah. And I think when you think about that, or even when I think about that, how important that knowledge is, that education from the beginning. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
A lot of times I was just talking to someone the other day and we were just talking about the school to prison pipeline. And it's a reality. You know what I'm saying? Like I grew up in South Florida, man, and I remember going to school and you can just looking back on it, you can see how a lot of the education, a lot of the things that we were taught were really meant to put us on this pipeline. You know what I'm saying? Especially as young
Mhm.
black boys, especially as young black boys. I have a son. And like I tell my wife, I'm like, man, you know what? It's my responsibility to teach this kid, to teach him at a very young age who he is and who he can be, because I can't rely on that educational system to do that. You know what I mean? They ain't gonna do it. They're not.
Not at all, especially with social media, man, because you could raise your kids perfectly, but once you put that phone in their hand and you send them to that school, they're going to be exposed to sex, drugs, gangs, violence at a much greater and more rapid rate than when we were in school. You know what
Yeah,
I'm saying?
yeah. How do you think we offset some of that? You know what I mean? As adults raising up this younger generation, because they have so much access. And obviously in our conversation, that knowledge is power. How do you think we can offset some of that?
Man, I don't know. I might not be the right person to ask. People, they say I'm extreme. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, I'm talking about moving back to Africa and stuff. I wouldn't even, just for me, I don't have children, so maybe I might not be qualified to speak, but I wouldn't even send them to some of the schools that we went to, the public schools. Each state and city and county is different, but I'm qualified to teach my kids the information that they need to learn. You know what I'm saying? ABCs, one, two, threes, basic math, reading, writing, and multiplication. I could teach that, but I am a substitute teacher. For
Yeah.
the viewers that don't know, I substituted K through 12, high school, middle school, alternative school, special ed. I done did it all. But I feel like Black people specifically, we have to take more control because we know the history of America. Malcolm say, you don't let your enemy teach your children. The majority of these teachers are not Black and they not Black men. So if you sending your children there, you setting yourself up for disappointment because you think that these schools are going to produce this child that's ready for the world and they not. Because I look at my nieces and nephews, they're not prepared to deal with this world as it is based upon the education that they obtain in these schools right now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's a huge thing, man. My wife she was a high school teacher before she started pursuing music full time. And it's one of those things we'd have these conversations. And, you know, as a high school teacher, you're just like in a predominantly black school, just some of the conversations and some of the effort, even as much as she could try and put in to try and helping the children, man, is almost too like it's overbearing. Like we can't leave it into the hands of the school system in order to be able to do that. You know what I'm saying? It definitely.
Yeah, it is overwhelming because I could tell you, substituting post COVID, man, them teachers got a job on their hand. And I'm talking about the teachers that really care and want to make a change and make a difference, man. It ain't going to be easy. So we don't have, especially like I say, Black Americans, we don't have that African, like they say, it take a village, what the saying I'm trying to say, it takes a community or a village to raise a child. We don't even have that. So we just sending them out there knowing about, like you say, the prison to pipeline. That stuff is real because they need so many people in prison.
Yeah.
And more than likely, it's going to be Black men. The majority of the people in prison is either Black men or Latinos, but a lot of Latinos are Black or they're mixed with Black or their grandmother or grandfather is Black. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's just a vicious cycle. That's why I always refer to Marcus Garvey and Malcolm X because they had a plan for us. And I know the majority of people, they're not even gonna consider, you know what I'm saying, doing the things that they told us to do. But I'm one of them people, so that's all I know, and it's working for me. If you look at my resume and things like that, I just try to share that information, man, because it's America. We've been here 400 years. You
Yeah.
feel me?
Yeah.
We've been taking the stripping the whole time. You could make money here, but
Sometimes that money ain't really worth it for what you got to give up for it. You know what I'm saying? Because if you can, like you said, like even in your mindset right now of moving back to Africa, going to Africa, it's possible to probably live where the cost of living is not as much as what you would need in America. And then you wouldn't be having to rely on hustling all the time to be able to keep up with where the cost of living is at. You know what I'm saying? So
there
definitely can
the
make it.
quality of life as well. I was in Africa the last 6 months. I was in Kenya for 3 months, man. I seen chickens every day. I seen cows every day. I seen lambs every day. I walked past where they grow the bananas. I could walk past where they grow the mangoes. So you never know what people are doing, but I could say when I go to this restaurant where I eat in the community that this food and this meat is local, and I could see the cows eating grass. I could see the chickens free range, and you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like not only is the cost of living lower, and then you could use your American dollar, but I'll say this about like living in Kenya. You will see, and you from Jamaica, so you probably can relate to it a little bit more than a Black American, like a born and raised Black American that never left. Like in Kenya, you'll see Black men making tables and chairs and furniture and couches and art and just different things. As a Black American, we don't make nothing in our house. You get what I'm saying? Everything in our house, we have to buy it from
Yeah.
another group of people. So that's the position that we're in economically. Like we might drive a car and our dad may work for the car factory, but a lot of these companies and different things like that is owned by all groups of people. And then our corner stores, like in Cleveland, that's where I'm from, is owned by non-Black people. Our beauty supply stores is owned by non-Black people. Our grocery stores is owned by non-Black people that's doing our nails, non-Black people. So it's just like, if you're going to stay in America, man, it's going to be hard for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel you. I feel you. Dang. That's some knowledge right there, bro. That's some good stuff to really think about, man. I think that as we kind of wind down on this, man, I think what we touched on makes and it's opening up my eyes. I think whenever I have conversations with folks, it doesn't matter what we're talking about. I'm always seeking to understand what can I learn here. And out of this conversation, I felt the important thing that I'm looking at is number one, knowing your history, knowing like who you are, so that you can empower yourself, so that you can recognize and realize, okay, there's more to me than just what everybody else is saying that I am, whether it be
Exactly.
media or the people around us. And I think that could be helpful, man. Where if people want to find out about what you got going on, man, and the things that you're doing, man, I would suggest anybody listening to this, man, if they can reach out to you to find out about getting their genealogy done. I need to look into it myself because I want to know, but where can people tap in with you, man, and where can they find you, man, if they want to learn how to connect?
Man, hit me up. My website is taiyeuhuru.com. My Instagram, my Facebook, my YouTube is taiyeuhuru.com. So if you want more information on doing your genealogy, it's for anybody, any color. You know what I'm saying? I may be able to help you retrace your roots and find old family members and old family records. I have a book. My book is called The Afro Set. You can find it on my website. I do tours to Africa. I take groups to different countries. We just did an all girls, all women's group tour in South Africa. That was in January. I took a group to Egypt in December. We go to maybe 7 or 8 different African countries. You can check out some of my music. I got a podcast too. Check me out.
Yeah.
Celebrity, a lot of dope celebrities be on there. And check out my mental health group. It's called Mental Health for Black Men and Black Boys. Anybody can pretty much join it, but it's for black men and Black boys. So we got a husband, a brother, an uncle. Share that information with them.
Yeah, most definitely, man. And I'll make sure I definitely put a link down and everything that you're working on, man, and everything that you're putting value to, man. I'll definitely make sure to link you up with some folks, man.
I
Well,
appreciate you,
brother,
King.
I definitely appreciate you too, man. Like I said, we reached out, we connected that way, and I learned some things, man. I learned some things, and I hope some folks learn some things by listening to this and just having more of these conversations, man. This has been Nick with the Life Recreated podcast. Listen, until next time, as always, keep learning, keep healing, keep growing.
Right.